I want to highlight, I read this report earlier in the week, and I was kind of aghast at the amount of affordable units that the Westside and the low-density areas are hemorrhaging. Okay, so I've circled on the right the Richmond, the Marina, Bernal Heights, the Inner Sunset, and the Outer Sunset. And you can see they are they're losing so many affordable units. Those areas that are hemorrhaging units are all these low-density areas that don't allow apartment buildings. So I think the solution here is obvious, right? We should legalize apartments in these areas. I think a net or just a blanket RH4 zoning for the entire city is not only reasonable, but would easily have the capacity of 30,000, 50,000 units. And we could, set an extra requirement that some percentage of those has to be available at below market rates, because clearly what we're doing now is not enough.
And I actually do not know how many cities across the country have a minimum of what we call RH4 zoning, but the mayor of Minneapolis, Minnesota just proposed this for his city, making, I think they're calling them fourplexes citywide. So it's not like this is a radical idea. It's something that when done thoughtfully and hopefully efficiently and timely, it can really, really improve the situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what this says to me is that there's a policy in our city that I actually am having a lot of trouble with, just in my heart. And that is that we're replacing mostly rent-controlled units that are affordable and are interspersed all over the city with affordable units in just a few neighborhoods. And they are on the east side of town mostly. And that's problematic from a housing segregation, perspective. I'm not sure we intended for that to happen. I'm not sure we said, hey, we're going to replace, rent-controlled units with new BMR units, but only on this side of town. But because of our zoning, that is what's happening. So I really want us to keep that in mind and then to intentionally tackle it. I mean, upzoning, especially around commercial corridors, is one way of doing it. And I agree with Ms. Ram, the preservation of rent-controlled units is key, but it is a fact that some neighborhoods are carrying the water for other neighborhoods in terms of the production.
Thanks, Commissioner Johnson.
Beautifully said, Commissioner Melgar. I couldn't have said it better myself. Looking at these numbers, I too just noticed the growing segregation and loss of affordable housing in very specific neighborhoods.
Thanks, Director Ram.
Thank you. Commissioners, those comments were really well taken. I had never thought about it in those terms, that it's kind of replacing rent-controlled housing with affordable housing, but in a different part of the city. And I think, in general, when I look at this report, it's struck by the neighborhoods with the lowest, with the negative housing balance are the neighborhoods with the least new housing. I also feel like I need to comment on this notion of upzoning. My contention is that there are many factors why housing does not get built in the city, and zoning is only one of them. I'm delving into that more with the Mayor's Office of Housing, because I'd really like to understand whether it's zoning, whether it's a perception of market demand, whether it's lower housing prices in certain parts of the city. I don't fully understand it, but the point is that zoning is not the only factor in going into housing proposals and housing production.
Commissioner Melgar.
So I was going to argue with you a little bit, Director Ram, because I do think that there's a relationship, right, between upzoning and the projects being feasible. So I know I'm so glad that you're meeting with the Mayor's Office of Housing and working it out. And we discuss it here a lot in terms of the financial feasibility of a project. And oftentimes, with tax credits, a project is not feasible if it's 3 stories, 4 stories, but it is feasible if it's larger. And so I do think that it's the same for market rate units. And, I live on the west side. I live close to San Francisco State. I think that it is really underzoned. you know. And yes, we could go up to 4 stories, but 4 stories might not make a building pencil out. So I am looking forward to having more policy discussions around this. I think that it's both a combination of what's feasible and what's possible, and also coupled with really strong tenant protections, because, we don't want to, increase the density and give people an incentive to evict tenants, making the situation even worse.
Commissioner Fong.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to go on the record and put a request that one of the next area plans be a Westside high-density corridor plan. I think it's while uncomfortable for some, if we don't start it now and start thinking about it, not do it right, it's going to be not something that we really like at the end. So
Thanks, Commissioner Johnson.
I just want to go on the record on seconding that I think the West Side is overdue.